We are back for the final edition of Best Bet on this closing Sunday of the Del Mar Summer Meet. Where the heck did the time go? Hello, everyone. My name is Frank Scatoni, and I am your host for this weekly live stream, where I am joined each week by a special guest to discuss the best betting opportunities on Sunday's card. I say this every week, but just as a reminder for those who haven't listened before, it's not your traditional selection show. We're not going to talk about every race. We're just going to look at specific races and wagering strategies that offer the best opportunities to make a decent score. If you're watching live, feel free to send us a comment or ask us any questions. The show will also be archived on Del Mar's Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube platforms. So let me introduce today's special guest. He has been around the game ever since he was a little kid, and he's one of the most consistent contest players you will find. His name is always at the top of the leaderboards. He's qualified for the NHC 12 consecutive years, finished in the money 4 times at that event, and he was right there at the final table in 2020. He also finished in 8th place in the 2021 Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge. Please welcome today's guest, Chris Podratz. Chris, how are you?
I'm well, thanks, Frank. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very good. I'm excited to be here, but I'm a little disappointed that the meet is grinding to a halt. It's my favorite time of the year, this summer meet. But it's bittersweet. It's been a good meet though. But how about yourself? How's your meet been?
Well, I've not had the opportunity to play too much during this meet at Del Mar, but it's like you say, bittersweet. For me, it's kind of sweet because the meet will come back to Santa Anita here real soon, and that's a little bit closer to where I live, and so it's like my home away from home. So.
Okay, I get it. So we're going to talk about a couple of races today, but let's just start off with the basics and tell the audience a little bit about how you got hooked on horse racing and how you've maintained an interest in it all these years.
So, born and raised here in Southern California and grew up going to both Santa Anita and Hollywood Park. Had both sides of my family, mom's side and dad's side, the families were into horse racing. So it was kind of like we would have pretty regular family reunions that would either be at the infield of Santa Anita or at Hollywood Park. And so for me, that was the first thing, is being around family. And as time went, just, the love of the sport. But it's like association. It's like now as an adult, you have a bottle of wine with good friends and a good meal, and you associate. When you have that wine again, it brings back those memories and associations. And for me, it's the same thing when I go to the track. It just brings back so many memories from childhood to even my adult life, being there with my father, with my cousins, brothers. So it's really that. It's kind of like my place to just go and really just relax and enjoy the day.
I agree. There's no better feeling when you get up in the morning and know you're going to the racetrack, and then you walk in and the possibility of the day is all before you. It's just a very exciting time. But, going there, having fun and having that experience is one thing. How do you turn that into what you've done and got serious about handicapping, about wagering, about playing in contests? That's a whole other step.
So one is I don't play every race. Even when I'm at the track, I don't play every race. I try to hit my spots in the races I don't play, just try to enjoy the race for what it is. And again, the environment that I'm in, being present in the environment, Santa Anita, my home track now with that beautiful backdrop, I can sit there all day, and it could be a horrible card and not have any races to play and just be there and enjoy the day. So it's being selective and picking your spots. For me, I like to look for opportunities of stringing races together. So I like looking for a card where there's a couple races back to back, or three races stacked, and do the pick three, or like you say, the double with races back to back, and look for those opportunities.
Right. Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit more about that strategy when we talk about a couple of the races that you've selected. But before we talk about betting, let's talk a little bit about handicapping. Uh, what tools do you use? What are you looking for when you analyze a race? How has your game evolved over the years in terms of handicapping and all the information that's available to you? I'm always curious to know what sharp players like yourself use and
Right.
how you look at a race.
So it in the beginning it was the racing form, racing form and a pen or pencil. Now I I'm trying to shift to this electronic version of past performances, and I do utilize value capper in my handicapping as well. Um, though I
What is
still
value? I'm sorry. What is value capper? I
value
don't think I've heard
capper,
that.
it's a computer program that really it pulls up the races, and I could pull up all the races for North America and filter out specific things like races that are high pressured, um, with a lone closer, or races that aren't high pressured and have lone speed, or looking for it has different settings where you can look for horses coming third off a layoff where they're running against other horses that just beat them, and you're looking for them to reverse, and come back in reverse the result from the prior race where it's their third off a layoff. And typically in those situations, it may lend itself some value because you'll have a lot of the betting public sees that horse A just beat horse B and they're coming back 3 weeks later. Well, horse A should beat horse B again, but that's not always the case. Looking for one horse to move forward and the other horse to possibly digress. So there's a bunch of different settings that it can filter out. And where that for me has been helpful is like for the innings. When you're having to handicap
Yeah.
7 different tracks, you could already like just filter out races and not and then not spend much more time on handicapping those, and really kind of target different key angles that you feel comfortable with handicapping.
Right. Well, that to your point also before that you made about being super selective. Race selection and figuring out which races to get involved in and where the value is half the battle. So the fact that you have good race selection and you also have the discipline to sit out the races is probably what makes you a very very good contest player. And I want to talk about your contest experience because I know you've had great success. Tell us a little bit about how you got involved in the contest, and then I always want to I know you're good at both mythical and live bankroll, and those are two very, very different strategies. Do you prefer one over the other, and how do you get your mind in the right headspace when you're playing a mythical versus playing a live bankroll?
Yeah, my preference is live bankroll because the mythical you either win or you got your empty pockets. And I know there's some live bankroll that you hit or your empty pockets.
Right.
But in live bankroll, you could still come out positive and not have to win the contest, not have to win that play. Especially on the bigger ones like the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge. There's depending on how you're sitting going into the last race and what your thoughts are on that last race. You could be sitting on a bankroll and just bet yourself down part of it to try to reach the target that you think is needed to win it. And if you're wrong, still have bankroll to take home. I know there's some more aggressive players that will always just unload all of their bankroll in that last race, and that's not my strategy. So I may be at a disadvantage to win it. Not that it's impossible to win for me, but I'm maybe at a little disadvantage, but I'm at more of an advantage over consistently coming out positive from that contest.
Yeah, I feel very similar to you. There are some players who will tell you you either finish first or you finish last with zero, and there's no in between. And I just don't have that all or nothing mentality. Uh, you know, this summer was a very good example of that. I had a little bit of success in the tournaments. I finished 10th in the second weekend tournament. I finished 10th in the Pacific Classic tournament. Uh, didn't win. Was trying to get up higher on the leaderboard. It didn't work out, but I still ended up with decent plus bankroll and prize money. And then just yesterday, the TVG contest, I ended up finishing fifth. Um, I was in a position to make a little money in the last race, and I did, but I wasn't a situation where, um, you know, you want to win the contest, but you don't want to push all in if you don't, if you don't love a race or have an opinion. To me, I'd rather push all in early in the card and go bust than save it to the last race and end up going all in on a horse that I may or may not like just because I'm trying to win. So I guess my point is there's a lot of game theory. There's a lot of mental jujitsu that you have to play as a contest player because the added value with the prize money could be significant and could be a life changer. So that's tricky. Like, how do you deal with that?
Yeah. So it does change based like on the lower live money, lower cost live money. I'm going to be more aggressive and obviously
Sure.
going all in. It's not. But in speaking of like on the BC, and I'll just use even last year as an example. Going into the last race, I was in third place and I had a bankroll of 46,000, and I bet myself down to like about 40,000. So I used 6,000, took some, just looked at what the will pays were, and took some shots at hitting the trifecta that would have with a target of 125 grand, thinking that if I could hit that would be a good spot. And if not, I'm going to still go out with 40 grand plus whatever purse money that would accompany that, and it would still be a good day. And like your point that you made earlier in the contest, in the 2 days of the contest, I did go all in a couple times, but it was to build and get to that point. But going into that last race, it wasn't a race for me to at that point to go all in. Yeah.
No, that you also make a very good point. When you play these live bankroll contests, I mean, everyone is different. Every contest is different, and every final score is different. But you kind of want to have a target number in mind to know where you need to be to win the thing. And then if you feel that target number is out of reach or you're not comfortable spending the bankroll to get there, then you need to figure out, okay, well, what is my target number? Where do I want to finish? And what do I need to shoot for in this race so I can reach that number?
Right. In identifying a target that is very important in both mythical and live bankroll. In NHC, there's different tiers. The 10% cut where you need to be end of day one, end of day the cut after day two, and then even on the third day there, just the progress. If you make the cut, you're that top 10%. The progression of that day of what is the target to make the final table, and having that is really key because it keeps you from unnecessarily swinging for the fences too early versus looking for more likely winners that could just help you keep climbing up the ladder to get to that your target.
To the number, yeah. One last question before we start into the races, because this is something that I struggle with. If I'm playing in a contest, I'm focused on the contest. So sometimes that takes me out of what my normal daily play would be. So I have a hard time multitasking and say, okay, well, this side of the brain is going to focus on the contest. This side of the brain is going to focus on just my daily live action. That's always very, very tricky for me. Do you find you have any problem with that? Like, especially if you're playing a live bankroll, you're already spending the money, you're already betting. Do you still have money allocated to other bets that's part of your daily play?
Yeah, I do, and I'll look for opportunities with either like the early pick five or a pick four or the late pick five for one. Things that aren't usually part of the live bingo contest. And aside from that, if there's horses, if it's in the betting confines of the contest, I won't necessarily spill over. So I will make some other wagers, but it's usually on the bets that look good to me that aren't part of the menu for the contest.
Right. No, that absolutely makes sense. And then what about mythical? Like if you're playing a mythical contest, are you still betting
Yeah,
like you
yeah,
normally would? Yeah.
yeah. So if I'm playing a mythical contest, and it's a live mythical, right? Live versus
Yeah.
pick and pray. If it's pick and pray, picks are in, and it's
Right.
you know it's kind of like a in that scenario. I've my bankroll that I'm playing on the races with my live bets. That's just going to be a typical day looking for my spots and making the plays. When it's a live um, mythical, I still can do that, but I do, as long as I'm in contention, I am really focused on the contest or the tournament.
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I've missed bets because of that, right? Bets that
Yep.
I intended on, I didn't watch the board, and like the race goes off and in a missed opportunity. Um, yeah, I also tend to not start drinking until I'm out of a contest.
That's usually pretty good advice. No, I love it. I'm so glad to talk to you about that stuff because, like I said before, there's a lot of mental jujitsu that goes on, and I think people out there who haven't really played contests don't understand that there's often the game within the game within the game while you're playing these contests. So it's always great to get advice from a player of your caliber. So thank you for sharing that. Well, we got 3 races that you want to talk about today. So let's dig right into that. It's
All
a
right.
very competitive 11 race card to close out the meet. We've got mandatory payouts in all the pools, including the pick six, which has a jackpot carryover of 166 that will get seeded into the pool today, and it must be paid out. So that'll be something for players to look at because they have to pay out the pick six today. I know you have 3 races you want to talk about. One is early in the card, 2 are later in the card that are part of the pick five and pick six sequence. So we'll be discussing races 2, 7, 9. Let's get right to it. Race 2, $40,000 optional claimer, non-winners of 1, contested at 1 mile on the main track. The morning line favorite is number 6, Holding the Loot at 2-1. Very honest racehorse, just ran second against open 40K claimers, was taken out of that race by Glatt, who promptly legs up Pratt, who's been in town all weekend. His best races are certainly good enough, but it should be noted that he hasn't been able to beat allowance foes throughout most of his career. So does he break through today, or will someone prove better and offer value in this race?
So I look at this race, and yeah, Holding the Loot definitely has run fast enough and good enough to win this race. However, I see that it's a vulnerable favorite, and if you go back earlier in its racing career, he had a big run similar to his last run back in April, and he really reacted and bounced off of that effort. So I'm kind of looking at him. He had a big effort his last race coming off of a layoff. I'm thinking that may have taken a little bit out of him, and he comes back and regresses a little, and leaves it open for the horse I like here is Lord Dragon. I think Lord Dragon should move forward, and if Holding the Loot reacts to the race, I think the race sets up nicely for Lord Dragon. I think it's a high pressured race, so a lot of speed, and I'm anticipating that Lord Dragon will be sitting off of that speed and go past them in the stretch. So hopefully I can get that 10-1.
Yeah, talking about race shape and understanding pace is so critical to coming up with a winner. There is a lot of speed in this race, and Lord Dragon showed a really nice closing kick last time. Question for you: do you pay attention to the way the track's playing, or ascribe any value to track bias or inside, outside, speed, closers, anything like that?
I do actually at Del Mar, and I think it impacts more in the winter meet than it does during this summer meet. Is actually the tide. I kind of follow the tide, and and what I mean by that is the timing of the high tide and low tide. Right now, in the opportunity that I typically see there is when the tide is extremely low, the the track will favor speed. And as the tide gets more higher, it's not that it favors closers, but I think it plays more fair
More
and it
fair, yeah.
allows opportunity for closers. And I think if you go back to like last year's winter meet, early on, the the tide was really low in early races, and it seemed like speed was unbeatable. And then you get to the end of the card, and the tide was high, and it would actually play fair. And so that was also actually that is also something that I actually used during the Breeders' Cup betting challenge, and I kick myself because if I would have stuck to that, I know I'm going back onto the BCBC, but if I would have stuck to that, Nick's Go would have, the tide was almost zero at the time of the Breeders' Cup Classic last year. But I expected Medina Spirit to put pressure on him, and when
Right,
Medina Spirit didn't break, I was like, nah. So,
right. And
but
Nick
yeah, so
still
I
just
do.
cleared and
So for Del Mar, I kind of watched the tide a little bit. Um, during like I said, the summer meet, it's the extremes aren't as extreme during the races, but there's still some opportunity there.
I love it. Every angle to try and get a bit of an edge and to take advantage. So before we move on to the next race, what is your suggested plan here with number 4 Lord Dragon, who's a morning line 10-1.
Yeah, I'm gonna play this race just a straight win bet on for Lord Dragon.
All right, win bet number 4 Lord Dragon in race 2. Let's move on to today's 7th. It's a Calbred $20,000 optional claimer, non-winners of 1, contested at 5 furlongs on the turf. The rails are at 0 feet today. Morning line favorite is a tepid 7-2. That's number 1 Forgiving Spirit for Peter Miller. He wins a lot of turf sprint races, but he's also had a pretty quiet comeback this summer, although he heated up pretty good the last 2 days. So it'll be very interesting to see how his horses do on closing day. This one figures owing to his inside speed, but this 3-year-old has also had his fair share of tries at this level. How do you see the race, Chris?
So the horse I like in this race is the 12 Atomic Drop. Looking at its last race, it it had so much trouble. It was bumped, it was blocked, it was bumped again, and when it finally got through, it did run on and got second. And I think if it didn't have that much trouble, it wins that race. And I think coming back here, I think it sets up well for it to run its race and not be bottled up from that 12 post.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. You know, how much credence do you? Obviously, every race is different and every race shape is different, but uh, are you worried a little bit about the far outside post in the turf sprints?
You know what I'm not that worried about it. I think his running style, he should be. I'm more worried if he's bottled up, to be honest, with Abel Cedillo on him. I prefer him on this horse outside than being bottled up.
So you're seeing like a good forwardly placed stalking trip in the
Yeah,
clear.
and he should be able to get himself over enough and find a spot so he's not too wide on the turn, um, but have clear
Okay.
running in the stretch.
And what what wager will you do with this horse? And then I also know you wanted to talk a little bit briefly about the pick 5 because this race is part of the sequence, and I know you like to play the multi-race sequences. So what would you suggest doing with the 12 here?
Yeah, so I'm gonna play a straight win bet on the 12 Atomic Drop, and
Okay.
for pick 5, I'm gonna throw in because in this sequence of pick 5, there's a couple races that I'm gonna single. They're not races that I love, but to pair up with my 7th race and 9th race and play the pick 5, there's a couple races where I'm going to commit to a couple of singles and take my horses that I like plus a horse that I'm afraid of that I think offers value. And in this race, I think the 4 Bricks, I think offers some value. Morning line, 12-1 morning line. with Barrios, jumping up on with trainer Barocchio. I think they pair up really well, and he puts them on some good horses. So, like the way Barrios has been riding at Del Mar, and I anticipate he'll be flying late, and he may be, he'll be flying late. My atomic drop will be moving, and if he flies past me, then I can still, string the pick five.
Okay, so a win bet on number 12, Atomic Drop, and then you're going to start off the late pick five with the 4 and the 12. When you look at a, because you told me earlier that you have two horses that you can single in the sequence, and you can mention those horses before we talk about the next race. But I mean, how important is it, when you're constructing your ticket? Like, will you not play a sequence if you can't find one or two good singles, or it just depends on how everything else lays out?
Yeah, it depends. It depends how everything lays out, and it depends on the prices that I'm playing. If it's a sequence, I won't do the four horses in every race type of ticket.
Right.
I don't have to have a single, but if I don't have a single, then I've got to have two or three races, and I'm only using two horses.
Right. Okay.
So it doesn't
All
get
right. So
too.
yeah, then it gets prohibitively expensive, and you're wasting a lot of combinations, trying to cover a lot of combinations, most of which are going to be losers. So yeah, you want to try and be as tight as you possibly can. So in race 8, you had mentioned to me earlier you had a single that you were going to use in your pick 5.
Yeah, I'm going to single the 7 horse Censorship. Just
Okay.
looking at that horse, it's coming off of a long layoff, and so uh, what when it was running last year, it was running numbers that are very similar to what these horses are running this year, and this horse has got a year of growth, and it's working out. Its spaced works are nice and got solid works. So I'm anticipating that this horse comes off that layoff with that growth in tops the field. So I'm going to single the 7 Censorship in my pick 5.
Yeah, and we all know Baffert very rarely brings back short horses, so you know this horse will be fit and ready to run, and especially if he's putting up on Johnny V. So number 7, Censorship at 4-1, single in race 8. Let's talk a little bit about race 9, your other key race on the card. One of two races, the $100,000 Del Mar Juvenile Turf, a Grade 3 event for 2-year-olds, going 1 mile on the lawn with the rails at 0 feet. Morning line favorite in this big oversubscribed field is number 6, Dandy Man Shines at a lukewarm 4-1. Makes his first U.S. start for Red Barons and Jeff Mullins, and they typically do good work together with their imports. Rispoli rides, so you have to figure this horse is live, but there's not a lot to go on in here. This is a very tough race, so I'm curious to hear who you came up with.
Geez. Thanks for asking, Frank. I'm going to go with the 1 horse, geez. This horse is going to be stretching out. I think I do think it's a challenging race, but I like the 8-1 morning line. I was impressed with Geez's last race. I think it should handle the stretch out and appreciate the extra ground. In this race, though, I will do an exacta box. In that exacta box, I'm going to use Dandy Man Shines, the 6 horse, and the 13 horse Tahoma.
Okay, so win bet on number 1, Ajeez, and then exactas with the 6 and the 13.
Correct. And on the
And
pick
then
5, I will use all 3 of those.
all 3 of them on the pick 5. Okay, in the so we started off 2 by 1 by 3, and I know you have a single you want to just mention in the 10th race. We'll talk briefly about that, but your key races were races 2, 7, and 9, and you came up with some really good prices and very interesting horses. We'll see how they do today. But just briefly, in the 10th, for people who are playing a late pick 5 today, what would you recommend?
I'm going to single another Baffert horse with the number 7 saddlecloth, which is Cave Rock. Again, it's going to be the favorite. It's going to probably take money, but it's the pick 5, and I'm just looking to get past that race, and hopefully I'm correct. And I think this horse is head and shoulders above the rest of the field, and it should be an easy win. And hopefully we're alive going into the 11th.
Yeah, I don't want to put you on the spot because I know we didn't talk about this race, but if you are alive going into the 11th, who's on your ticket?
I'll use 3 horses, so it'll be a 2x1 by 3x3, and I'm going to use the 3 horse Flint Stroll, the 7 National Road, and the 9 Half Barber Benji. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right.
Yeah, Half Barber Benji.
Yeah.
All right, so you got Flint Stroll 4-1, National Road 3-1, and Half Barber Benji at 15-1. I actually wrote up race 11 for the Del Mar website, so you could see who I like in that race by going to dmtc.com and checking out the handicapping page. Chris, I want to thank you so much. I mean, we talked win bets, exactas, multi-race bets, giving out a pick 5. We covered a lot of ground today. Thank you for taking the time to join us, and I can't wait to see you up at the Logan Suite at Santa Anita. It won't be long now, about a month, right, before it starts?
Right, correct. In opening day, I think September 30th.
September 30th. All right. Well, that'll be a lot of fun. That wraps up the final best bet seminar of the meet. I will be hosting the final Sunday handicapping seminar with Dylan Donnelly later today on track outside the Hacienda Room at 12 p.m. Since first post today is 1 p.m. Come say hi. You won't want to miss it. And once again, thanks so much to Chris Pudratz for coming on and sharing his insights with us. This has been great. As I always like to say, good luck to us, and let's make some money. See everybody during the fall.